It has been 7 years since this device was launched all the way back in 2015, and back in that time, it was a game changer in terms of the build materials, the value, and most importantly, the price at which it launched with. This is the OnePlus X, and this is my review in 2022. I really like the sleek and symmetrical look of the OnePlus X. This phone is special because it was the first time OnePlus took the approach of crafting the phone with glass both front and back, which is then enclosed together with a metal frame. It surprisingly feels much more premium than its bigger brother, the OnePlus 2. I love how the 2.5D glass curves within the edges to give it a more sturdy and industrial look as it meets with the metal frame. The metal frame consists of chamfers, which further constitute to its impressive look, and also consists of grooves that run along the edges which are meant to assist with the grip. But even besides that, the phone still feels very slippery both on the hand and on slippery surfaces, so having a case on this phone is an absolute necessity. Unfortunately, the glass back doesn't support wireless charging or even NFC, which is quite disappointing, but still I guess this was OnePlus's strategy of trying to reduce the cost of the phone itself. One thing that will shock you is how light this phone is to carry, weighing at only 138 grams, which by the way may surprise you the first time you pick it up. In addition, some elements of confusion may arise when trying to identify the front and the back of the phone, but luckily these buttons will assist in identifying the phone's position. Hardware-wise, this phone features a micro SD card slot, the first for OnePlus, which can be expanded up to 128GB. The micro SD card expansion slot can also be replaced with another SIM card, meaning that the phone can now support dual SIM. It also has the legendary headphone jack at the bottom and an alert switch slider at the left side, which supports 3 different modes, which is the sound mode, the silent mode, and the priority mode, which can be customized according to the notifications you wish to receive in this particular mode. At the bottom, it has 2 speaker grills, of which only one serves as the speaker, while the other serves as the microphone. By the way, the speakers sound really flat with little to no bass, so that might be a major disadvantage in addition to how easy it is to cover up with your finger. This iteration didn't come with USB Type-C, which was introduced to its bigger brother, the OnePlus 2, but again, that was the moment when Type-C was introduced, so it is normal to see it not being implemented onto a budget device. This phone also features a multicolor LED notification light at the top front and also has capacitive buttons on the bottom, which unfortunately are not backlit, so again, that was another bummer of this device. This display is by far one of the best aspects of this phone. The reason for this is that it features a 5-inch Full HD AMOLED display, which means colors are more vibrant and the contrast is much more improved due to the inky blacks, which is the main characteristic of AMOLED displays. Saturation is also on point, meaning that the visuals really pop on this display. Being a 6S owner, I've got to appreciate AMOLED much more because of the difference it makes in terms of color production. The screen peaks at 300 nits, so that might be a challenge if you're trying to use this phone outdoors. When it comes to the overall performance, this is where unfortunately the phone really falls apart in comparison to phones of today's standards. Back in the time, this phone was launched with a 32-bit Snapdragon 810 processor with only 3GB of RAM. This relatively old 32-bit architecture meant that the phone will only get updates for 1 year, which implied that the phone will only be upgraded from Android 5.1 Lollipop to Android 6.0 Marshmallow, and unfortunately that was the end of the road for OnePlus X in terms of software updates. The only way to beat this was installing third-party ROMs, which is not a guaranteed option for stable performance, as you may tell. What all this translates to is that in terms of speed, the phone feels relatively sluggish, but that has to be expected, especially for a budget phone like this at this point in time. When it comes to connectivity, this phone has fewer LTE bands, which may affect certain network providers, meaning that there is a reduction in the signal, and also the phone does not support 5 GHz AC Wi-Fi, which means that one will experience relatively low transfer speeds, especially when trying to download and update apps on this device. Software-wise, as previously mentioned, it supports Android 6.0 Marshmallow with stock Android and OnePlus customization features such as the gestures, which can be performed when the screen is off. We have the dark mode feature, the customization of the system accent colors, and also the ambient display, which can be displayed when notifications arrive or waving over the screen. The phone has only 16 GB of internal storage, so having the micro SD card expansion is important. Speaking of the battery, this phone features a 2525 mAh battery, which is still decent in 2022, even better than the Galaxy S4 that I had back a while then with almost the same capacity. I can say that it has relatively good standby times with no standby drain issues whatsoever. The screen, however, drains the battery if you're using it in its brightest setting, so that is one aspect you have to be aware of, especially when using this device. This phone features a 13-megapixel camera with an aperture of f2.2 as well as an 8-megapixel front-facing camera. When it comes to the images, they are quite decent in my opinion, with good color reproduction but with poor dynamic range. The camera suffers to recover highlights even when using the HDR feature, and also the camera suffers when it comes to resolving details, as you can see with the foliage right here. It doesn't get better for shooting night shots either, since the images still don't look appealing, but again we have to consider that this was a budget phone after all. It also has a dedicated manual mode, which I really like since it gives you the ability to manually adjust the focus, the exposure, the shutter speed, and also the white balance. In terms of video, the main camera is only limited to 1080p video recording, with support for slow motion up to 120 frames per second in 720p resolution. The videos produced aren't that exciting either because the camera lacks OIS, so they can be really shaky, and also the clarity and the dynamic range is also not as good as its successors. Slow motion isn't great either, considering it only shoots in 720p resolution. In conclusion, this is a device that I wouldn't recommend you to buy, but essentially this video was meant to remind you of where OnePlus has come from since it launched this device back in 2015. The reason behind this is that this was a popular device with one of the most premium build from OnePlus, yet it came at a budget price of only $250. The phone still performs decently and can handle basic tasks very well, but with Android Marshmallow, you're missing out on many features as well as security updates. You can install a ROM if you wish to alleviate this, but even with that, you still have to consider that this is an old phone and there are other alternatives in the market currently that can do a better job but at the same price point. But the main point here is that this definitely has to be one of the best phones that OnePlus has ever created. Thank you so much for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe. I've been your host, Maxwell.